Have you ever thought of what it's like to be the weakest villain in the bunch? I'm not talking about being a faceless goon like a stormtrooper, or one of the henchmen that gets beat just before the final boss. What I'm asking is to consider yourself, mostly as you are today, but if you were enrolled in an elite supervillain gang alongside the likes of Dr. Doom, Green Goblin, Bane, and so many more, how would you compare to them? How would the others see you? Your colleagues have the capability to fracture society, and then there's you, almost just on it as a bandwagon. Because that, my friends, is essentially the perspective of one of, if not the most underrated character of My Hero Academia, the reject Ninja Turtle himself, Spinner. Since the My Villain Academia arc finally kicked off in the anime after being delayed, I thought this was the best time to return to the next installment on our talks about the My Hero Academia villains. I know they're not necessarily one of my more viewed videos on the channel, but they're still videos I enjoy making, and so I'll keep putting these out for the time being. And today, we're going to be discussing Spinner of the League of Villains, who I believe to be the most overlooked character in the series and often is forgotten about, despite the significance of what he represents and his potential for roles in the story going on. Now, just as a heads up, we will be discussing his role in the manga only up to his most recent appearance as of the time of this recording, which would be chapter 298. So if you're sensitive to spoilers, I'd recommend catching up on the manga before returning to this video. And before we begin, as always, if this is content you're interested in, I'd just like to humbly ask if you consider liking the video or even subscribing to the channel, as it really has an influence on the direction of content that's being made. After all, it's the only way I know how I can do more that you'd want to see. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. And with that said, let's talk about Spinner. If you overlooked Spinner at a first glance, I don't blame you. He first appears in the Forest Training arc back in Season 3, which introduced a whole slew of characters for the League of Villains, with only a small handful seemingly having any real notability as a character. Heck, Spinner's own introduction is almost a joke, frantically chanting the glory of Stain's ideology like an over-obsessed fanboy in cosplay, as he unveils a massive weapon of several swords and blades poorly held together with belts and duct tape. His role in the fight is, let's be real, pathetic. Despite his villainous brethren giving auras of mystery or brute strength, and even one-off characters like Moonfish and Mustard have a small skirmish and put up a fight against the heroes, Spinner fails pretty hard. He's caught off guard with a cute remark from Mandalay, pretty much taking him down, then his homemade sword of kill murder death is quickly broken apart with one swift kick from young Midoriya, and he's humiliatingly apprehended by the Pussycats. He only escapes when the MVP mother of the group, Kurogiri, has to save him, teleporting him back to their hideout. And if you think the day he's had has been bad enough, take a look at what happens right after he's rescued. I thought I had bad days. So with all that said, it's a pretty uninspiring first appearance for a character, so you wouldn't be at fault for thinking little of him, especially compared to his comrades. Kurogiri is such a powerhouse that the heroes single him out and target him, thinking that his loss would cripple the League. Tomura is the grandson of one of the greatest heroes and recently got a massive power boost. Toga could potentially become a copy of anyone, and speaking of copies, if it wasn't for his depression and mental instability, Twice could conquer a nation by himself. And what can Spinner do? His quirk is just called Gecko, which gives him a lizard-like appearance, the capability to kinda stick to walls, and possibly the ability to sell car insurance. Compared to his comrades, he's a street thug in cosplay at best. But if Horikoshi is good at anything, it's his ability to mislead you with characters, only to reveal more of them later on. And this is exemplified best with the League of Villains, especially in the My Villain Academia arc. And thus, this brings us back to Spinner. We learn quite a few things about Spinner during this arc. One of the biggest, and I think most overlooked elements, is his background, which introduces a concept that is hardly mentioned in My Hero Academia: quirk prejudice, and the judging of those whose abilities result in their appearances being less than human. In a passing remark in the early pages of My Villain Academia, Spinner recounts a brief amount of his backstory after the gang's encounter with the Creature Rejection Clan. Spinner remarks that he grew up in a real backwater place, known only as the Lizard Freak, and was just sort of accepting of that kind of bullying and went along with that with an empty hollowness to him, only inspired by Stain's ideology of how one man could change the world on his own, and that inspiration lit a fire in him to be where he is now. And interestingly enough, his fellow League member Dabi calls him out for being a hollow villain in cosplay, to which he absolutely admits. A more shallow interpretation of Spinner's character comes from the likes of Trumpet, saying that Spinner is merely a recluse, now seeking revenge against the world. Arguably, that's true to an extent, and ultimately, there are plenty of bad villain characters who are little more than someone stomping their foot in the name of revenge. That alone, however, doesn't give someone anything of value. But Spinner, he already knows that. He knows he's not someone of value, just like how he admitted to Dabi that he's a hollow cosplayer, someone someone jumping on a bandwagon without any knowledge of where they're going next. But as he said to Trumpet, what's wrong with that? What's the problem with being a nobody jumping on a bandwagon in the hopes of seeing something bigger than themselves? It's extremely fitting and definitely intentional that Spinner is pitted against a politician in a fight, as one could describe those who follow the ideology of a politician in a similar manner. People who recognize that they may be small in the larger picture, but ultimately still contribute to their political leader and strive for nothing more than to watch them succeed. And this is where Spinner's personal perspective comes into play, as first Stain, then Tomura became his inspirational politicians, if you will. Whereas characters like Toga exist for love, Twice for friendship, and Dabi for revenge, Spinner's goal is to see those who inspire him succeed, and through that inspiration, he finds his own purpose in a life that others would call devoid of meaning. In a way, he's one of the more human and relatable of the League. He represents what it means to be inspired by someone else, and with that inspiration, you can fuel your own passions. If you can't create an army of yourself, or have the incredible ability to destroy massive groups of people with a single touch, that's okay. If all you want in life is to view a future that someone else is inspiring you to think towards, that's all you need to take part. No matter what, you aren't useless if you're taking part in something which is lighting a fire in your own heart, as I'm confident that's a feeling many of us have experienced in one way or another, and in a way that makes Spinner one of the most down-to-earth and human characters within the League. In fact, Spinner is one of the more level-headed characters in the League, and like Twice and Toga, sees the group as more than just a villainous gang of cohorts, but rather his friends. Towards the end of the war arc, where characters like Dabi are dancing amongst the carnage, Spinner is one of the ones who attempts to calm Toga down in a level-headed fashion after what happened to Twice, remarking that it'd probably be important for all of them to be together once this is over. And in chapter 298 of the manga, in what is honestly one of the most powerful moments in the series to me, Spinner is horrified of All For One possessing Tomura. He remarks that All For One was not the one that he chose to follow, and in the moment I find most tragic, he reminisces about how he and Tomura bonded over video games. A moment which seems trivial, but it really gives the both of them a lot of character. Suddenly, all those memes and in-jokes about the League of Villains being a group of idiots who play Mario Kart feels real. Suddenly, you can imagine Spinner and Tomura talking about how they're still waiting for Bayonetta 3, or how once they take over the world, they'll personally burn down the EA headquarters together. You can really fill it up with any moment, but then once you do, ask yourself, can Spinner really have those conversations with a monster like All For One? If there's anything to take away from Spinner, it's that sometimes you don't need to be the big bad, or the one with the crazy high power level. It's okay to be the one looking to follow orders, and it's okay to be the one inspired by others. Despite a lack of power, it's through that inspiration that Spinner has contributed immensely to the story, despite a seemingly small role. And because of his loyalty, he's the one that ultimately rescues Tomura, pulling him out of the war arc. Ultimately, they're small actions that could have been done by anyone, but Spinner is the one to do them. It's through moments like this that I think Spinner will have a grander role in the coming final arcs of the story, especially if it means bringing Tomura back under control and wrestling his body back from All For One. All I'm saying is, maybe keep an eye on this one. I think there's a lot more to him that meets the eye, and perhaps you might even see something relatable in him. Though, if you do become a supervillain, perhaps you should take a bit more time to think up a signature weapon. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. My goal with this video was to change some perspectives around a character who's rapidly becoming one of my favorites in the series, so if I was able to change just one person's mind, that's all I need. What are your thoughts on Spinner, and which character would you like to see me talk about next in this series? Let me know in the comments. I definitely have some other remarks I want to make about this current season, but let's wait for that to end as a whole before we touch upon that. As always, if there's something else you'd like to see for the channel, feel free to let me know. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to like the video, share it, or even subscribe if you want to see more videos like this made. And if you want to talk personally, feel free to join our Discord linked in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I could see you next time.